The Rose King. The Rose King is an abstract game in the two-player line of games by Cosmos. It is thematically, and I should say allegedly, inspired by the World of Roses, but really it is a completely abstract game. There is virtually no theme in it, which is not a bad thing per se. It is just an aspect of the game that is good not to have a misunderstanding about. It's a two-player game that is very simple, very linear, like so many other games in the two-player line by Cosmos. It can be used as a play with your spouse, where a regular player of games can play with an occasional player. So usually you have a gamer married to a non-gamer. Statistically, that's bound to happen in many households, and this is a kind of game that you can play with your non-hardcore board gaming spouse. It is also a game that is so simple that it can be played with a child. The recommended age on the box is 10 and up, but I did play with my daughter Amelia, who is 5, almost 6. She could play it, and quite well. There was a game where she won against me 82 points to 11. I kid you not, and I wasn't even trying to let her win. That's just how good she was and how bad I was, I guess. However, her review at the end was like, it's a little bit boring, but just a little bit. She wanted to make clear that she overall enjoyed it, but the game was a little dry. There wasn't enough movement, I would say, in it to hold the attention of a 5-year-old. But conceptually, it can be played even by someone that young. Now, as for the game itself, it is played on this board here. It has a crown, the cute little crown that goes in the middle of the board at the beginning. And yes, my daughter Amelia and also the other one recently watched the movie Minions for the 3rd time. So as soon as they saw this, they started going, "C'est la corona!" Like, well, speaking Mignonese, of course, then followed by "C'est la banana! Nyam nyam!" But if you know the movie, then you know some Mignonese, and you know how that perfectly fits the meaning of the movie. Well, perfectly fits the theme, the atmosphere, the madness, the zaniness of the movie. But listen to me. But look at this. Talking. Back to the game. Now, you have the crown in the middle of the board, and then each player starts with a hand of 5 cards from this deck, and the cards are placed face up in front of the 2 players, and they need to be placed all in the same orientation as La Corona on the board. Oops, the camera just fell, or almost did, luckily enough. I was able to stop the disaster. So each player will have a hand of cards that both players can see. You can always see the hand of cards of your opponent. Then players will alternate taking turns, and each turn you can take one of 3 actions. If you have fewer than 5 cards, then you can draw another card from the deck, as simple as that, and that completes your turn. Or you can play a card. When you play a card, you move the crown by the number of spaces indicated on the card, 1, 2, or 3, in the direction indicated by the highlighted sword on the card that you're playing. So if I'm playing this card, then it goes 1, 2, 3. When I'm playing a regular card like this way, I'm taking a turn of this kind, the arrival space needs to be empty. And when I get there, I place a token of my color. The colors are white and red, as also indicated on the board. So I move there by using this card and say I'm the white player. I place a white token there. Then my opponent decides to take a similar turn. My opponent plays this card here, 1, 2, 3, and places a token like that. So then I do 1, 1, and so on, say, and so on, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. As you can see, things will tend to be dispersed, and this is an interesting challenge because you're actually trying to put your tokens adjacent to one another to form territories that are connected through edges. Being connected through corners doesn't count. In this case, where a player has a territory of 4 and a territory of 1 space, this would be a single territory worth 5 spaces or 5 space large. The other action that you can do is an exception to something that I mentioned earlier, that is the arrival space needs to be empty. You have these cards. Each player starts with 4 of these cards. They can be played, each can be played only once per game, and they allow you to break the rule that says that you need to land in an empty space, whether there is a marker, a token of yours or the opponent. Usually it has to be an empty space. With this, you play a card of this type together with a regular movement card, say this one. This is discarded forever. This goes in the discard pile as usual, but then you move the crown in an area containing a token of the opponent, and you steal that token. You turn it to your side. So this is sort of like shifting alliances, if you want to say this thematically, or simply means you flip a token so that now it is of your color. That means that there is that limited but very important ability of changing the side of the tokens, which means certain types of terrain will be stronger than others, because if my territory is sort of linear like this, for the white player, it's very weak, because a single switch of allegiance may break up a territory of mine and actually connect multiple territories of the opponent. Whereas a territory that's said to be more like a square or a rectangle is much stronger, because even if I change one of the sides, that may increase a territory of the opponent, but doesn't completely destroy one of mine, doesn't break it into smaller ones. And having large territories rather than a bunch of small territories is key to winning the game. Why? Because the game continues until the players cannot play cards anymore, because simply the configuration on the board and the cards that they have don't allow them to have any legal move, or until a player has placed all of their tokens on the board. Whichever happens first, the game is over and you count victory points. You get victory points for territories, and listen to this, listen to the value of the points. A territory made of a single space is worth a point. In a territory that is large, two spaces large. Each space is worth 2 points. If you have a territory of 3, each space is worth 3 points, so that would be 9. This, I guess, you guessed it. Basically, the value of each space in a territory is equal to the number of spaces in the territory. A territory of 4 is 4 points per space, so 16. So you have an incredibly high exponential increase in points with larger territories, and this is why it's so key to prevent your territories from being broken into smaller ones, because as I think I showed earlier, a territory that is, say, 5 or 6 spaces, that is, for example, 6 spaces, is much more profitable than 2 that are 3 and 2. It is not just a matter you lost a space. You lost a huge boost in the value of each space in your territory. You count victory points this way, and at the end of that process, the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. What is this game to me? This is an abstract game for war gamers. And mind you, not because of the alleged war theme, but simply because of the large random factor, because of the hand management element that you have. In so many war games, you have a lot of luck, a lot of randomness, and war gamers love that. They dig it because it represents the unpredictability of warfare, the fog of war, your inability of controlling all the elements of the army that you're leading, and so on and so forth. That's a simply uncontrollable element of warfare that is well mirrored in games by randomness. And abstract games, think of chess, checkers, and so on and so forth, so very often do not have any random element, or they have a limited one. Well, not here. Yeah, you have the joy of a spatial configuration that you're trying to manipulate to create with hand management problems that are typical of card games, and in recent years also card-driven word games. In any case, you have a random element that you have to deal with. You're playing an abstract game where you're maximizing your odds of achieving something, like it's typical in luck-based games or in war games. However, in a scenario, in a game system that is otherwise very clear, terse, abstract, very geometric, and very typical of abstract games. So it's a strange hybrid, but one that actually I found quite pleasant, and also one that had some interesting hidden depth. I really thought there was gonna be play a card, move the crown, play a card, move the crown, la 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 la, da di da. But actually, there is some hidden depth, because there is, of course, a set of problems and challenges and opportunities that arise from the fact that you can constantly see the hand of the opponent. This is key. I guess in some cases it may lead to analysis paralysis, hopefully not. But in truth, if a player has 5 cards, that most likely 2 or 3 of them will not be legal to play, because one will end you in an area that you control. So even these cards, even these special cards here, do nothing for you in that situation. Some of the cards would put the crown out of the board, which of course is an illegal play. So maybe you have 2 or 3 actions that are legal. So you do have some interesting decisions from a range of options that are not overwhelming. If you really had 5 options for yourself, and each time that you need to decide which one you take, you want to take into account how the opponent may react, then you would have a game that would be easily prone to analysis paralysis. This way, I have 2 cards. If I play this one, my opponent may do 1 or 2 reactions. If I play another card, may do 1 or 2 or 3 reactions. I say which one would be disastrous for me, which one may give me better chances. Also have other things to take into account that obviously will make certain cards less profitable. For example, I may get myself stuck in a corner where all the cards that I have then become illegal because they point towards the outside of the board. So you can easily select the range of reasonable and legal options and make an informed decision there. Or you still have the joy, the pleasure, the puzzle of figuring out what is best for you and what is best under circumstances based on what the opponent can do to react. But the range of options is not overwhelming. Yet it is there. Yet it is interesting enough to make the game challenging, and again, to give the game some hidden, nice depth. I found myself enjoying this design more than I expected. It was a pleasure to discover that I could play with my daughter. Less so to discover that my daughter probably will not play it in the future, but while it lasted before she decreed, before she said that the game was a little too boring for her, I was happy to enjoy it that way. I want to play with my wife too, and definitely is a game that is enjoyable to play with adults because it is simple to teach, linear to understand, but really with some nice interactions. I like the lack of control, or the limited control that you have over the game pieces, that forces you to constantly adjust your tactics. Well, overall you can still have a general strategy, but then the opponents will create certain configurations and you will see opportunities that open to jump into certain areas, to break down some of their territories. And maybe you will need to do some maneuvering. And again, of course, there's also the opposite side of the coin, which is your defensive maneuvers. You're trying to score certain things, but if the opponent has still a lot of these special cards that change the side of the tokens, maybe you want to start another territory and keep the crown far from territories that the opponent then may try to break into smaller parts or into territories that may be open to enemy attacks. So there is again a nice range of options, a nice range of game opportunities that I found very pleasant. And within a game system that is very simple to understand, very interesting, but very fun, very simple to play. But again, I find it fun and interesting. It was a pleasant surprise to discover that the Rose King, yes, is very abstract, but yet it is very playable and very enjoyable. For a game that is more than a filler, mind you, but that is still not complicated, still is not a meaty game, I think that the Rose King is definitely a good option. And definitely it follows the philosophy of many other games in the 2-player line by Cosmos, of games that are more than filler, less than big monsters. Games that you can play with a large range of people and most likely with your spouse. In any case, the Roast King, a really nice game, well produced, nice looking, simple, and enjoyable.